Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show, episode 76, March 13th. The madness is close, 2022. Jay, Mike, it is good to be back. What is going on?
What's up, man? Good to be back in the saddle again, getting this thing rolling. And of course, we're always happy to have Dr. Roto, college basketball lead analyst and NBA and NASCAR contributor Mike Holland, our Longhorn insider, the original, the OG guest of the show. Mike.
Hell yeah.
What's up, man? Good to have you back.
Hey, it's good. Excited. It's Selection Sunday today, so we'll get to see what our Horns who they get to face off in the first matchup, and just excited here and hoping it warms up because it's cold in this garage for mid-March.
I hear that.
Yeah, man, no doubt about it. Yeah, excited to see where the Longhorns are going to fall in this bracket. Let's start there, man. Let's dive right into some college basketball. So, Horns are coming off of 3 straight losses here. We've got, ended a couple in the regular season to some pretty heavy competition. So there's not a whole lot to hang your head about there, except maybe how some of those games ended. But losing to some of those top teams isn't just the worst thing. But then you get into the first round of the Big 12 tournament and you lose to TCU. So, Mike, we wanted to start with you today and sort of just ask you, what are your thoughts on how this season sort of wrapped up with those losses, how the conference play ended, how the Big 12 tournament sort of ended? What are your thoughts on how this season ended for the Horns?
Yeah, it's disappointing, right? I mean, you start off preseason top 5. You go out and recruit a bunch of guys that have shown the ability to score the ball, and you have trouble scoring the ball. So just super frustrating. I mean, you look at it on the year, 32% from 3. That's kind of been the Achilles heel. And overall, just the offensive flow has just been stagnant. We've seen multiple droughts. We saw, obviously, TCU make the 20-point comeback here to seal the fate in the Big 12 tournament. Overall, the defense has been pretty good this year, something you can hang your hat on. Obviously, the Big 12 conference is no joke, right? So taking some of these losses at the end of the year is not the worst thing in the world, but I just think the way that it looks, it's just not – I don't know. It's just frustrating at times. I found myself at times this year, just flipping the channel and not wanting to watch the offensive creativity that's just been lacking. The loss of Trey Mitchell has been huge. I mean, he really would have helped in that Kansas game. McCormick just camped out in the lane. There's no threat inside anymore. Timmy Allen's undersized. I mean, he's a great playmaker, but he needs to be paired with another a skilled big. And there's just no one that can really stretch the floor now with Mitchell gone now. And granted, he's only shooting 32% from 3 as well, but you still have to honor it. It opens up the floor. Bishop's not a 3-point shooter. And, I don't know quite what's going on with Marcus Carr and his shot selection, just finding his role in this offense. But, I never thought I would be saying 32 games into the year that I had no idea what this team, who they are and what's going to happen. I mean, they could easily lose in the first round. They have enough talent to make it past the Sweet 16. So I just don't trust the offensive creativity this year.
Yeah, I think frustrating is the key word. I think that's been the common theme for us chatting amongst each other throughout this season has just been how frustrating it is. You mentioned how it's looked. We talk a lot about the eye test here, and that's what you look at the record, you go, oh, okay, well, who did they lose to? All right, those are some really good teams, but just the way that it looked at times was frustrating. And I want to ask Mike, isn't it kind of weird that we're talking about here after, what'd you say, 32 games, we're still trying to figure out exactly what this team looks like? And you mentioned kind of this range for possible outcomes in the tournament. Does this team, the way that they play, suit itself well for the tournament? Do you think that, I know we've kind of heard about that, okay, this is, it's maybe not the most exciting stuff, but defense travels, it's going to be, they're going to be in these games in the tournament. The question is, how far can this system get them?
Yeah, I think it's going to come down to matchup, right? I mean, we're hovering on that 5-6 line right now, and those are some dangerous teams that come in. I forget what the stat is, but what is it? 12 was beating the 5 every year for in the last decade or plus or so. So there's some dangerous teams that come in that win their leagues. We were joking around on the text message, hoping, we don't get matched up with South Dakota State because those guys, they just shoot 35-foot threes. And so, I don't care how good your defense is, you're not going to extend out 35 feet. So, definitely a team to watch for. But I think for me, it just comes down to matchup, right? Like, who are the teams that Texas can really play with? And I think those are teams that are, more defensive-oriented, slower-paced teams. You get Texas into these up and down games that they don't want to play in. They'd rather slow the game down. I think it's going to be tough. So it's going to be really interesting to see who they draw on their side of the bracket. More so than any other year, I think that's the most important thing, is who, what teams are going to be in their pods. So, the range of outcomes is so large here. And, Chris Beard's shown it, right? So until we don't see it, we kind of have to expect, a win or two here. And at this point, we'll just take a win, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I mean, honestly, like, and Kerry and I were talking about that pre-show where you sort of just, okay, if you win a game in the tournament this year, do you look at it as a step forward? Or if you win your first round matchup and you get the brakes beaten off you in the second round, like, do you still get those calls for changes or for Beard to look at this and figure something out? So I guess with that being said, Mike, for you, what would define a successful end to this season, sort of moving into, this tournament and how, whatever the result is, what would define successful for you?
I think getting that first round win, I think right now the expectation is not very high, right? So you come in, you get a 5 seed, you can take down a 12. No shame in losing to a 4. So for me, I think it's just getting that first win. Then obviously anything can happen, right? And that's why they say this is March. So for me, I mean, at the beginning of the season, it was like, man, Elite 8, Final Four. Obviously, when you're ranked preseason number 5, those are expectations you're going to have. As we've seen what this team looks like, and that they still don't know their identity. I mean, I would gladly just take a win. Consider it a solid year. It is Chris Beard's first year, right? So we'll cut him a little bit of a break. And, you always got to give a coach 2 to 3 recruiting cycles to get his guys in. I don't know what it is about these coaches that come in here and want to change like who they are. We saw it with Shaka. Very disappointing to, see what he's doing now at a Marquette team that, was picked to be at the bottom of their league. So, Beard just needs to figure out his guys, get them in here, and, a win or two here would create some momentum for recruiting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess that, the expectations sure do change, right? I mean, that's where if we were talking about this a few months ago with, just get a first round win, and that will kind of, we'll take that at this point. Like, does that still define a successful season though? There would still be, at least in my mind, kind of like a bitter taste. If this team lost in the first round, like, Jay kind of alluded to, there's almost a sense of like, it forces Beard into some self-reflection, into kind of like, okay, maybe what I was doing this season didn't quite work. Or if you win a first round game, you go, hey, well, this is something that hadn't happened here in a few years. And, maybe what I'm doing is working, and there's maybe not as much reflection. Like, it's, if he gets on a big tournament run, who knows? But I don't know. It's fascinating to me. I mean, it's you almost, as a fan, don't want the cracks that we saw this season get papered over. You almost kind of want things to be exposed and to be addressed and like fixed immediately. You don't want it to be delayed a little bit. So I don't know. It's going to be a very fascinating tournament for this Texas team, I think. Mike, what do you think about that? Like this kind of like it hanging in the balance, if you want to call it that.
It's weird, right? I mean, you're going to get the 2 stud freshmen coming in next year. You're going to lose a lot of seniors this year. You're going to have to turn this roster over again. And I think the key here in the offseason, you get a win or two here. You're feeling good going into recruiting, transfer market. Let's see how he reacts to the type. I don't know if he's going to want to go out and get, a Trey Mitchell that can score the basketball. Maybe he goes out and gets a Marco Santos Silva who plays really tough defense. I mean, at this point, he shouldn't change who he is. That's kind of what got him in this place. And if we have to win ugly, then at least win, right? Like,
Right.
the whole like recruiting these guys that all they know how to do is play one-on-one, score the ball, and then you put them in a box. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think when you talk about a player like Santos Silva, who is definitely not the most dynamic on the offensive side of the ball, but brings that what Chris Beard is known for as a coach to the table. And if you surround, you get a couple of these maybe that's his plan. You look at how he's treated this year with basically, overhauling 2/3 of the team with guys out of the transfer portal, a couple of the holdovers here at that stayed around in Austin. And you mentioned something to me, or you mentioned something, Mike, about losing the seniors thing. And basically, like, there's two like super seniors on this team right now. And there's a lot of these guys that, although they're seniors, might have an opportunity to come back with that extra COVID year potentially. Do you see any of these guys sticking around that maybe, in terms of like their classification are seniors, but could have that extra COVID year? Do you see any of these guys sticking around and maybe trying to run this back with Chris Beard?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, right? We saw the stat. I think they posted that this year's Longhorn team is older than the Oklahoma City Thunder. As far as the starting lineup, like so I know a lot of these guys are going to want to get their money professionally. I mean, I don't know if they are going to want to go through this again. We've been hearing things that there's, not just Trey Mitchell, but obviously Jalen Tyson, and there's some rumblings that a couple of other guys are just frustrated with what they were sold here versus when they actually got here, what it was. Chris Beard's a really tough coach, and it takes a certain type of player to be coached that way. And not every superstar wants to be coached that way. We see that in the NBA all the time. But I think Beard needs to work on his adaptability, right? You can't coach everyone the same. And if you're trying to get elite level stars, which really Beard hasn't really had in his, in his coaching career. I can't think of, outside of maybe Jarrett Culver, one stud. And Jarrett Culver's more of a grinder. I can't think of one guy that just really, separates. How would he have been with the KD? These guys that are coming up that, you look at the Dukes and the Arizona's, these guys are running up and down the court, super athletic. These guys don't want to play an emotion style offense. So it's just going to be really interesting. I don't know how this is all going to shape out. Right now it looks a little rough, but if he gets his guys in and really establishes his culture and the way he wants to play basketball, yeah, I mean, we've seen the ceiling, right? It's just going to be tough here in Austin to do that. As we see Mark Adams at Texas Tech is basically doing the same thing Beard did with basically the same type of guys. And it works there, right? But you're talking about Austin here. It's like, this is, we want to see a product, not just the wins all the time. So,
Yep. Those Moody Center season tickets next season are not going to be cheap. I think people want to be entertained, and so it'll be.
Well, they're real proud of that arena already, and it's not even completed yet. Like that. That's they're gonna fill it up though. It's gonna be a great environment though, Kerry. And I feel like, Kerry, with what Mike was just saying in terms of the type of player that Beard wants to bring in and coach up, like it's gonna be. Do you think about, because this is Austin, there has to be like that superstar type mentality? Or do you think, Kerry, that Beard can get it done here in Austin with that type of, the Santos Silvas, the Brock Cunningham types, and then you get that one sort of big name, as opposed to right now where we were talking preseason, how this was more of a college basketball all-star team. Kerry, do you feel like that's something that Beard can do? Because, like, Mike, your point on Beard Beard is Beard. He is who he is, and he's going to be the coach that got him to the University of Texas and that found him success at Texas Tech. But, Kerry, is that a thing where, is this an environment that this style, do you think, can be successful?
Yeah, I think both things can actually be true. I think maybe there does need to be some kind of, like a superstar, high profile, something, kind of player or style to like attract fans. But I also think Beard's style and everything can be successful here. And I think it can be engaging for the fans. I mean, all of us, we attended some really good games this year. I mean, you had the Kansas game that you guys were at. There was the Baylor game, the Tech game. Like, these were all, didn't quite get the results that we wanted out of the Baylor and Tech games. Those weren't pretty and engaging and entertaining back and forth games. Those were grinded out slugfest, and the crowds were engaged. The Tech game was an interesting crowd to say the least, but that's what I think. I think it can be successful. I think if you're winning and you're going down to the wire with top ranked teams, I don't know if the style necessarily matters in those situations. People are going to want to come see a winning team. But if you're not going to be a top 5 team throughout the season and winning that way, then you're going to have to do there's got to be something to get the casual involved. There's got to be something that's like, why am I going to spend the money to go watch, 40 points be scored, on a cold Tuesday night, against pretty bad non-conference opponents. Like, that's where, for me, it kind of like, can he do it? Sure. Does it necessarily translate to Austin and all those things? Maybe. Time will tell. But I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm still hopeful, but like, yeah. I mean, it's like Mike said, there's a lot of things that kind of factor into this in terms of getting the right players in for that system. And if he's going to stick with that, then that's what he has to do. You can't go after the guys that are going to be one and dones necessarily, which some Texas fans will say is a necessity of the job. If you don't recruit those guys, then maybe you're not the right fit.
Yeah, Mike, you brought up the coaching style earlier and how certain players like to be coached or don't like to be coached. And it takes a special type of player to take that day in and day out grind that Chris Beard is putting you through. Mike, let's move on a little bit to some bigger picture stuff in terms of basketball and the big dance. Are there, we look at the Big 12 has been a grind all season for everybody. Like nobody really got through the Big 12 unscathed. Do you see somebody coming out of the Big 12 that is legitimate? Like, at the top of this conference, there is obviously some impressive rosters and the defending national champion. So do you think any of these Big 12 teams have what it takes to make a run at this?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think obviously Kansas, very experienced team, and we saw David McCormick last night really ball out. And if Bill Self's going to get that out of him, I mean, they're going to be super dangerous. So definitely a team to watch, and potentially a one line here. Baylor, I mean, Scott Drew at this point, I guess we have to give him credit, right? No matter how much we hate that program. But
we don't have to.
I mean, I don't want to, but I mean, he's putting up the results, right?
Yeah.
It just is what it is. And then you have Texas Tech, right? Like, man, I'll just give kudos to Mark Adams. Did a great job. I mean, wow, like no one saw that coming, right? Bryson Williams been really good this year. Just a band of misfits, man. That just tough, hard-nosed players. They're going to be really tough. Nobody's going to want to play Texas Tech in the tournament. You can guarantee that. Duke is, definitely would look forward to that opportunity. Just an absolute slugfest. But yeah, the Big 12 definitely has a chance to make some noise. I think we're getting 6 teams in, So, we'll see what happens, right? It's really just going to come down to matchups, right? That's basically what this thing comes down to, and what teams are playing the best. Right now, I think Jay, you always mentioned that, like, who's the hottest coming into the tournament. And unfortunately, the Horns right now are, kind of licking some wounds. They're going to have to find a quick turnaround if they're going to want to get out of that first round.
Yeah, for sure. I guess who are some teams that, your so-called bracket busters, your mid-majors, whoever that's, however you want to term it, that teams that maybe aren't getting a ton of attention nationally or for the casual fan going into this, that when someone's filling out their bracket over the next few days, that they go, this is, one of those kind of hot names or someone to kind of keep an eye out for.
Yeah, so we talked about South Dakota State, a great three-point shooting team. I think the teams that really play the place and can really shoot the ball, South Dakota State, Colgate, they're number 1 in NCAA in three-point shooting. I mean, these guys just fire it up from anywhere, depending on where they're at. Another dangerous, potential 12, 13 seed here. You look at it, you've got Murray State, right? John Morant's, I guess, do you call it alma mater when you're one and done? But yeah, they're 30-2 this year. Some really impressive wins and played some of the top dogs this year. in some close games. And a lot of these guys are now seniors that were holdovers over that John Morant team that made some noise in the tournament a few years back. So definitely a team that's looking like an 8 or 9 seed that no number 1 seed is going to want to play them. I promise you that. And then you look at someone interesting like the Vermont Catamounts, right? A tough, hard-nosed team, can shoot the ball from the outside, has kind of that old school traditional postman that can get it done with Ryan Davis. So they're definitely a team that I like coming into it. But at the end of the day, for me, the number 1 team, I just don't see how teams are going to be able to scheme for these guys, no matter what type of style they play. Is Arizona. I mean, these guys can play big, they can play small, they can play fast, they can play in a dogfight. I mean, they're just so well-rounded. They're top 10 in offense and defense. So they're going to be my team to kind of take it down. I'm having a hard time, finding a matchup here. And obviously it's the tournament, so anything can happen, right? As soon as you say that, that number 1 seed goes down in the Sweet 16. But, it just seems like it always happens, right? That's the Cinderella always strikes. But yeah, I mean, Arizona for me is the cream of the crop right now.
Well, I mean, you skipped ahead to what we were going to ask you next, just kind of your picks to win this whole thing. And outside of Arizona, I mean, obviously we haven't seen the bracket. Like, what's another team or two that you think is right there that, right kind of, if maybe not to Arizona's level, but has an opportunity to really cruise to a Final Four?
Yeah, so I like Purdue. They play with these 2 big guys, Trevion Williams and Zach Edey. I mean, they're both 7-footers. They both play 20 minutes. And they just wear people down. They're number 1 in the country in foul rate drawn. So just getting to the free throw line. And college basketball, man, fouls are such a huge deal. I mean, how many times have we seen it? A Timmy Allen, in foul trouble 3 minutes in the game, and the entire game changes.
Or missing free throws.
Having one guy is great, but when that guy gets the missing free throws, right? Exactly. So for me, it's going to be Purdue. They have Jaden Ivey, who's going to be a lottery pick. I mean, this guy's just like a SportsCenter highlight reel, just making plays. So definitely the teams that also have great guard play, right? So you have to look at Remy Martin coming back for Kansas. You have to look at James Akinjo and Adam Flagler at Baylor. And then obviously Gonzaga, right? No one really knows how good Gonzaga is going to be in the tournament because the expectation is they just crushed through the West Coast Conference. They haven't played anybody outside of a St. Mary's team that is basically Texas on the West Coast that wants to slow the game down. And, essentially, what are they going to be? I mean, you have Chet Holmgren, who is just an absolute animal to go along with Drew Timme, and then Nimhard's there as your lead guard. I mean, they profile, obviously, to be a championship contender, but they really haven't played much in the last 2 months here. So, how battle tested are they? If they were in the, the Pac-12 or, another Power 5 conference and getting challenged every night, I mean, they may be a little more prepared for what's coming in the tournament. But overall, they do have the experience, and I don't mind them. I don't know if I can pick them to win it all.
Yeah, it feels similar to last year with them, like where it was kind of, they were cruising into the tournament, but you never really knew how good they actually were. I mean, they get to the national title game, but like that's, I guess, kind of what you get with Gonzaga. But Jay?
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast with that when you play in that conference, and you can watch Gonzaga play basketball and know that they're a good team.
Right.
It's just how are they going to react in a situation to where they come up against a team with superior athletes and on that one day can a team scheme and have things go their way, because that's like like you both said in the tournament, like basically it's all bets are off, especially after you get into the Sweet 16. So yeah, that's why you see a Gonzaga and you think, well, that's a Final Four team, lock it. And then you look at that Thursday in the second weekend, and then all of a sudden they get tripped up by one of those teams that you were talking about on an 8 line, that Mike, that is just playing so hot, playing so well, shoots the 3 ball well, has good guard play, all of those factors that go into successful tournament runs. Yeah, Mike, you mentioned St. Mary's being the West Coast Texas, and it's like, well, I feel like I'd rather be St. Mary's right now, obviously going into this tournament, because they've built up some confidence, and I know that they just lost to Gonzaga in that conference title game, but they built some wins up and they have some momentum going into the end of this or going into this tournament. So yeah, man, this is it's always a fun time, you know, with the bracket and everybody filling out their bracket, and mine's usually lit on fire after the first Saturday of the tournament, so it doesn't really matter. But Texas, you know, to wrap up the college basketball talk, Texas has the makeup to make a run here, and it's just going to be a matter of, you know, like you said, are they going to get into foul trouble? Are they going to make their free throws? Are they going to make their threes? You can't go
turn it over 20 times.
You can't go 4 for 27 from 3 and keep just thinking that's your whole offense. So, but yeah, man, good stuff on the college basketball there. Let's move on, Mike. Let's move on to a little bit of college football, a little bit of is Texas back any more so than the last time we talked? And judging by
Maybe
some of the smoke, some of the smoke around the recruiting news with Ruben Owens possibly leaning towards Texas, Mike, what are your thoughts on that news? Obviously, somebody that was committed to Texas before reopened his commitment, and now you have some more smoke. Is there fire here with Ruben Owens?
Man, who knows, man? This thing, that his recruitment's not going to be over until pen meets paper, and even then it might not be over. So, but hey, if you want to be elite, right, you have to fight. Like, you have, these are the ones that you look, he's not guaranteed to be, you know, he's not a sure thing. Obviously, we've seen 5 stars flame out, but the more of these guys that you get, the closer you are to getting to an Alabama type level. Sarkisian's done an amazing job. I don't think I've been on with you guys since the second signing day, but I mean, man, what a great job, right? What is he going to do when he wins 9 games in the recruiting trail? Like, when he actually has good things, positive things to talk about. Like,
give me 9 wins and I am happy.
Yeah, 9 wins and man, he might lock up like 9 5-stars.
God, bring it on.
So
it's not even hyperbole,
man.
It could happen. Like,
yeah,
legit.
You see some similarities. You see similarities to Mac Brown, right, in his first recruiting efforts here. I mean, God, the guy's just a workhorse right now, and getting it done where he needs to get it done, right? Offensive line and defensive line. I mean, that's, that when Mac first came in, yeah, we talk about, Chris Sims and Ricky Williams coming back, his recruiting job there. But man, in the trenches back in those days,
Corey Redding.
You had the big Leonard Davises, you had the Corey Redding, yeah, you had Mike Williams, you had Maulers, Dan Neals. I mean, that's where it starts, right? So getting the flashy names like a Ruben Owens is great, man, but I'm looking at offense and defensive line, for recruiting here, because it seems like we don't lack for skill players.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Yeah, that's one that exactly, it's going to come down to it. But just to be in the conversation, his was an interesting one because he was a COVID commitment, like when you couldn't take visits to campus and all those kinds of things. And I think when he decommitted, there was some, not panic, but some people going, oh no, I guess Texas is going to be out of the running for this, when it was such a unique time to get the commitment from him to begin with, that I don't even know if you can really count that as like a true decommit in the classic sense of the word, right? Like when people generally think about it, like he hadn't been on campus yet, all that kind of stuff. And so I think to now that time's gone on a little bit for him, for at least the rumors, I guess, the Wiltfong tweet may or may not have, that's the mystery. But I mean, just to even have the conversation at this point in the recruitment of like, hey, there's a, opportunity that this commitment could be dropping, like, is pretty damn impressive, honestly. And then we'll move on to Arch Watch. We'll see what happens as the off season continues along. But
yeah, if he's the guy that's rumored to have the 8-figure NIL deal, I mean, who else would it be in that 2023 class? But just that, obviously Arch Manning is the creme de la creme in this recruiting class and in the 2023 recruiting class. And I know that Texas is still on that short list. So we'll see if Sarkisian can close that deal. Yeah, man, real quick, I wanted to just say that Ruben Owens, when we talk about that type of an athlete where you have that, he runs a sub 11 second 100-meter dash and he long jumps over 23 feet. Like, that's the type of athlete that if you get those big hosses, those war daddies, like Mike likes to say, in the trenches, and then you put guys like Ruben Owens around him, that you really start to take it to the next level. So Let's make sure that we touch on some Sluggin Horns stuff, man. Let's get to some baseball action real quick. Horns are 13-2 right now, but I think they were expected to sort of be in this position early in the season with this good of a record. But what wasn't expected, Kerry, was obviously the injury to Tanner Witt, who was going to be their Sunday starter going into the season, and started it off well. But he's Tommy John surgery, that injury, and he's forecasted to be that a top pick in that 2023 MLB draft. This might set that back a little bit, but Kerry, what does Tanner Witt having Tommy John surgery do for this club?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge blow, right? I mean, like you obviously don't want to lose a player of that caliber, but the depth that's been built so far, like you have to feel okay. You obviously don't want it to happen, but it's not a season-ending thing for the team. It's not like, okay, all the aspirations are now out of the window. You lose a player of that caliber, it's finished. No, this is still the number one team in the country, and they still have depth, and they're going to have guys that are going to step up. And we talked about it, like just kind of going into the season about the pitching staff. Like last year, it was kind of like you knew who your Friday and Saturday guys were, but the Sunday rotation was kind of like they're still kind of figuring it out. Then they get into the postseason when things really started to come together with this, the starters. This team can do that again this year. They'll be fine. Like it obviously sucks losing him. You wish you had him, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, in terms of his prospects, you never know. Like maybe he'll come back next season, but I doubt it. But to be selfish at least, like, hey, maybe we'll have him next year. But no, you hate it, but this team's gonna be fine. I think the bats are just gonna pick up some slack if the pitching isn't. So
yeah, Mike, Lucas Gordon filled in that Sunday role and as Witt's replacement, and has done well already for himself in a few outings. So, like Kerry said, that depth is there. The offensive is there. You've got Ivan Melendez hitting the ball 500 feet, flipping the bat to center field, basically, which, you love to see. And by all accounts, he was getting chirped at all game long and then knocked the cover off the ball like he was Benny the Jet Rodriguez. So, I mean, like, you got to like, Mike, you got to like what you're seeing out of this Texas baseball team so far.
Yeah. I mean, you also trust David Pierce, right? Like,
right.
I mean, uber talented. The guy knows how to manage. Obviously losing Witt hurts. Let's not forget Hanson, Stevens, pretty good. So, and also there's a lot of top teams losing aces and our number 2 starters here. So, I think I was reading an article. I saw 3 or 4 of the better pitching prospects in the SEC are down with injuries. So, especially the kid from was it Lucas Sims from Mississippi State? I think is battling an injury. So, we saw him last year. So yeah, I mean, it's a grind, right? I mean, baseball always is. Obviously, losing a player of this caliber, it's going to hurt. But this is what the recruiting's for, right? This is what you pay David Pierce to do is build the depth, build a culture, and obviously he's established that. So, I'm definitely excited to see where this team's going to go. And then obviously the bats have been way better than even I anticipated. And just you guys don't miss like a small ball, Augie Garrido small ball.
I mean, there's a time and place for it,
Yeah.
As long as we can still do that, like when it's called upon that they can still execute it, great. But I'll take these long balls currently.
I don't mind watching Faltini smash one and Melinda, all these guys just like knock the cover off the ball. It's fun to watch. And it might, depending on the situation with the pitching, obviously on Sundays, and if that shakes out the way that Coach Pierce thinks it will, they might not need to, score 8 or 9 runs a game like they did in the Texas State series or things like that. But it's definitely a lot more fun to watch than single through the infielders on the ground, bunt him over, sacrifice fly, wild pitch, whatever. But whatever gets the job done, right?
If it takes Melendez bat flipping after a sacrifice bunt, I'll take that.
Whatever works, man. Whatever works. Hey, let's touch on Austin FC real fast. 6 points after the first 3 matches. Obviously went to Portland last night in their first road test of the year. A disappointing 1-0 defeat, but it looks different than it did against that same Portland team last year. It feels like a different club right now, scoring 10 goals in the first 2 matches, which is an MLS record for any season. The firepower looks like it's there. It didn't equate last night, Kerry, but obviously Austin FC off to a decent start this season.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they definitely showed that they raised their level a bit. Portland was a finalist in the league last year, lost to New York City in the championship. They went up to Portland in an ugly, sloppy night and hung in there, but they flinched. They were the first, they switched off for a moment, and that's what ended up costing them the game. So they're going to figure those things out. The next test comes this following weekend with the Seattle team that kind of got off to a rough start, but they're starting to figure it out. They're one of the better teams in the league. This is going to be, for everybody that said, oh, it was just Cincinnati and just Miami, this is a chance for Austin to really show what they can do at home against a really good team this season. And you can't complain about where they're at right now in the standings. So I know it's early, but long way to go. If they can build on this, then I think the team's in really good shape.
I mean, Cincinnati picked up a victory yesterday on the road away at Orlando City. So, maybe as this season progresses, some of these don't look as piddly, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, as you get along.
Honestly, this is what Austin struggled with last year, was teams that they were like their peers at the bottom of the table. They did really well against teams higher up in the standings. It was the teams that they should have beaten that they struggled with. And if they're beating the teams that they should beat 5-0, then who cares? That's enough of an upgrade for me.
The games against Portland, the Portlands, those teams of the like in this league will start to balance out. And when you go on the road, Mike, and get a good victory in any sport, it's it's a win. But obviously Austin FC coming up short yesterday, a little bit, 1-0 there, 1-0 for you soccer aficionados. Mike, we're gonna have to get you out to a game this year. We'll have to make it a bacon and eggs episode out there.
Road show. Yep.
Bacon and eggs road show. Which, by the way, we might have some video coming in. We're gonna put some stuff together for the next time we get together for an actual bacon and eggs road show. We had a correspondent out at the SEC women's basketball tournament over the last weekend. So we're gonna we may string together some video and have that for you next time. So
yeah, that'll be a fun one. Well, guys, we're under a minute here. We're hitting up against our time, but man, this has been great. Great to have you back, Mike. Looking forward to filling out the bracket. Let's get this thing rolling.
Can't wait to set mine on fire. Thanks for joining us, Mike. We appreciate you, man. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, y'all.
ATX represent Fatal, baby.